Hello everyone, this is Nitish and today I will teach you chapter 3 of Economic Survey to 2022 and 23. Today is episode number 3 and chapter is Fiscal Development Revenue Relish. This will be helpful for this year UPSC exam, but before starting this class I would like you to please subscribe the channel and also like and comment on videos. These contents are free of cost, so for test series and foundation videos you can contact to VYSH sir on WhatsApp 7200 681 675. So let's begin. First we will deal with the introductory part. Amid geopolitical conflict, the government of India's fiscal policy response to the crisis comprised of two things. First is increased food and fertilizer subsidy, and second one is reduction in taxes on fuel and certain imported products. These two measures have not only maintained a healthy fiscal policy but have also facilitated the recovery of economic activity. Next is regarding increase in capital expenditure, which means the government has further emphasized the increase in capital expenditure. An increase in expenditure on infrastructure intensive sector has positive implications for medium term growth. This capex-led growth strategy will enable India to keep growth interest rate differentials positive, leading to sustainable government debt to GDP in the medium run. Next is regarding inflationary pressures, that against the backdrop of inflationary pressures, the government of India adopted a calibrated fiscal response to the pandemic and planned to withdraw the fiscal stimulus gradually. So here we complete the introductory part of this chapter. Next is developments in union government finances. So first of all, we will discuss the graph part, then I will explain in detail. So first look at the graph which is on the left hand side, and as I told you that we have to only focus on the trends, not on the data. So the blue line graph is representing, that is sky blue, is representing fiscal deficit, and the purple line graph is representing primary deficit. So here first we will discuss the fiscal deficit. So we can say that the fiscal deficit is continuously decreasing from financial year 21 to 23. So if this statement is put in your prelims examination, so you will opt for the statement, that is you will opt for this statement and correct on the true part, which means that this statement is true. But if the statement is like that from financial year 18 to financial year 23 fiscal deficit is constantly increasing, fiscal deficit is constantly decreasing, so both the statement will be false. But if the statement is from the financial year 21 to financial year 23 fiscal deficit is decreasing, then the statement is true. Now move on to the primary deficit, which is the purple line graph. So the same explanation for this. If we consider from financial year 18 to financial year 23, the primary deficit is not constantly increasing, not constantly decreasing. Both the statement will be true. But if we will consider from the financial year 21 to financial year 22 and financial year 23, we can see that the fiscal and the primary deficit both are constantly decreasing. So this statement will be true. The second graph does not hold much importance, but I will explain a little bit that it is regarding the fiscal deficit target for financial year 23. And here we can see that in the year 2021 the fiscal deficit is 46.2%, but when we see in 2022 the fiscal deficit is 58.9%. It means that the fiscal deficit has increased from 2021 to 2022. Now continuing with the same topic, developments in union government finances. First is government revenue receipt. The government of India's revenue receipt has registered robust growth in financial year 22. This is due to rebound in the collection of direct and indirect taxes. The increase in tax collection has also helped India increase its resilience against global and domestic uncertainties. Indirect taxes flexible policy tool, which means while the direct taxes have safeguarded the revenue buoyancy, the indirect taxes such as custom and excise duties have acted as flexible policy tool during the fiscal response to the pandemic. Next is regarding GST, that the GST has increased consistently due to combined effects of number one is rapid economic recovery post pandemic, number two is nationwide drive against GST evaders and fake bills also, and the last is rate rationalization. Now, the next point. In terms of expenditure, the government of India has adopted a pragmatic approach in a calibrated way. The government has shifted to productive domestic capital expenditure and has further budgeted to increase it. So, this is the graph. It is a graph related to increasing union government capital expenditure to GDP ratio. So here the question arises, what is capital expenditure to GDP ratio? So those who don't know this concept, they can refer to the economics lecture. So I will explain the graph here. The graph is basically from the financial year 14 to financial year 23. So if in the statement, the prelims, if it is asked that from financial year 14 to financial year 23, capital expenditure to GDP ratio is consistently increasing or is consistently decreasing, then the statement will be false. But if it is considered from financial year 18 to financial year 23, then both the statements, only the single statement, which means the capital expenditure to GDP ratio is consistently increasing from financial year 18 to financial year 23. Now, next is the increase in capex has strengthened aggregate demand and crowded private investment in times of risk aversion and has also enhanced the long-term supply side productive capacity. Now, let's look at the graph. In this graph, there are three lines. The red line is representing interest payment or revenue expenditure. The green line is representing interest payment or gross tax revenue. And the third, which is the blue line, is representing interest payment and non-debt receipt. So, first we will discuss the red line, which is related to revenue expenditure. So here we can once again see the trend that from financial year 21 to financial year 23, revenue expenditure is consistently increasing. Here we can see this. Now let's look at the green line, which is representing gross tax revenue. Here in the gross tax revenue, this trend is false because from financial year 21 to financial year 23, it is not consistently decreasing or not consistently increasing, because here from financial year 21 to financial year 23, there is a downward slope, and from financial year 22 to financial year 23, there is a upward slope. Now let's look at the blue line, which is regarding non-debt receipt. So here also we can say that from financial year 21 to financial year 23, it is not consistently increasing, not consistently decreasing, because once we compare from financial year 21 to 23, there is a downward slope, and from financial year 22 to 23, there is an upward slope. Hope it is clear to you. Next is new topic, that is state government finances. The combined gross fiscal deficit of the state has been brought down to 2.8% from 4.1%. However, the data released by CAG shows that the combined borrowing of 27 major states have reached 33.5% of their total budgeted borrowings for the year. Recognizing the importance of well-targeted fiscal policy by national and sub-national government, the Union government has taken consistent steps to support the state finances and incentivize states to move forward on the reforms agenda. Since the pandemic outbreak, the government of India has enhanced the borrowing limit for the states. The Union government has also taken the following measures as reform. So, the number one is One Nation, One Ration Card system. Second is Ease of Doing Business reform. Third is Urban Local Body or Utility reform. And the last one is Power sector reforms. Now, move on to next topic, that is debt profile of government. The pandemic induced higher government borrowing to finance additional expenditure has increased total liabilities in financial year 21. Now let's look at the graph. This graph is relating moderating union government's debt GDP ratio after the pandemic induced spike. So here we can see there is a discrete graph, or we can see that there is an up and down graph, zigzag graph. So first I will try to explain you the trend. So if we consider from financial year 19 to financial year 22, this graph shows a constant increase. But if we consider from financial year 21 to financial year 22, there is a decrease. So this is the basic catch in this graph. Now move on to the next point. Out of the total net liability, 95.1% were denominated by domestic currency, whereas sovereign external debt continues 4.9%, which implies low currency risk. From the graph itself, it becomes very clear that the orange part, which is 4.9%, is regarding internal liability, and the blue part, which is 95.1%, is regarding external liability. Next point. The capex induced growth would facilitate beyond revenue collection in the medium term and thereby enable a sustainable fiscal path. This will also enable India to keep the growth interest rate differentials positive. So now once again look at the graph regarding this, which is growth interest rate differentials for India. So here we can see that the growth interest differentials is basically negative in 2021 and it becomes positive once again in 2022. So here you can see that from 2020 to the start of 2022, it is in bottom part, which means red color. So it is in negative zone, and once 2022 started, it is in green part, which means that it again increase. Now the conclusion part of this chapter. Using the crisis as an opportunity to bring about reforms, the government undertook a series of policy measures. And these are digitization, number 2, rationalizing GST, number 3, reducing tax rate, number 4, simplifying tax compliances, and the last is ending the uncertainty around retrospective taxation. These measures led to great formalization of the economy, enhanced compliances, and better reporting of the income by public and imparted credibility the government's commitment to fiscal management. As the governments make their fiscal situation sustainable and stick to that path, the risk premium embedded in their interest rate comes down, thus lowering the cost of capital for all the sections of society, like on their educational loan, housing loans, car loans, and business loans, and putting more money in their hand. Now, my view regarding this chapter is that the center should continue incentivizing the state for reforms and higher capital spending to ensure a stronger general government. The capex-led growth strategy will ensure sustainable debt levels in the medium term. So it is my view regarding this. Thank you. I hope you like my content and video. So please like and comment on videos, subscribe the channel, subscribe and stay tuned. Thank you.